now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Friends, welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. So good of you to join us tonight. We got a lot of ground to cover tonight, and we're going to go way back further than probably any of you were born. So hang on to that thought. We'll get to some old stories and old photographs and so forth in a minute. Before we do that, today is Wednesday, March the 16th, 2022. So if you're watching us on that day, you're watching a live show. Any other date, you're watching a replay. So just so you know. I want to send a couple thank yous out tonight as usual. You know, every week we have a lot of viewers who participate in the show. They call in, they send me emails after the show, before the show, whatever, and it's always appreciated. And we've got some really good viewers who are really diligent about trying to contribute to the show, and I appreciate that more than you know. It helps me get prepared for the show. It doesn't. I don't have to work quite as hard to get content together, put it that way. So after last week's show, I got a really nice email from Wallace Abernathy thanking me for the show, and he sent me some pictures. Some I already had, some I didn't. We'll get to those in a few minutes. Same with Randy Harrell. Randy watches the show regularly. Randy's an old Rocky Mountain boy who's now living out in Tennessee and watches us over the internet. So welcome, Randy. Good to have you with us always. And many of you may or may not know Gene Herring. I don't know if Gene watches the show or not, but like myself, he's an old history buff and loves old things. He runs a little booth out at that Tar River Flea Market out there on 301, the former Good Old Boys Flea Mall. But Gene is, for those that have Facebook accounts, if you've not joined the Rocky Mount Way Back When Facebook community, you need to do that. Gene is a frequent contributor to that Facebook group. And he put a lot of good pictures up over the last several days, and I borrowed some of those for tonight's show. So, like I said, I don't know if Gene watches the show. I don't know if he can get the station, but in any case, I always want to give him credit because I do appreciate all he does to provide content and historical data about Rocky Mountain, this area. So thanks to Wallace, thanks to Randy, and thanks to Gene Herring. You know, we've talked in prior shows about airplane crashes. There have been quite a few around the area over the years, and I'm constantly hearing about new ones and ones I didn't know about. And just this week, I heard about two that I had no idea ever took place. The first one was way before my time. In fact, both are before my time. But the first one was in 1919. I don't have a picture of that, but I stumbled across this article while I was looking for some other things, and I thought, wait a minute, I never heard anything about this. But ironically, it happened in Brattleboro, where I'm aware of two other plane crashes that have occurred over the years. We talked about Mr. Bob Ryerson here a few weeks ago, the pilot that unfortunately perished after a plane crash back, I think, in the 1950s. There was another plane crash outside of Brattleboro, a small private plane, oh golly, probably 20 years ago now. I think there were one or two fatalities in that. But in July of 1919, there was an Army Air Corps pilot who made a crash landing in a field. And if you would, put up the first picture there, Lee. This is just a clipping of the newspaper article itself. There's no picture here, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I found it interesting. The headline says, "Aviator forced to stop at Brattleboro." And it says, a flying lieutenant from Langley Field, Virginia, whose name has not been learned, was forced to land in a cornfield on the farm of Mr. W.B. Phillips near Brattleboro Saturday afternoon. It says because of engine trouble. The airman and a fellow aviator in another plane were on their way from Langley Field to Wilson. In making the landing, the plane was slightly damaged, but the lieutenant escaped injury. The other airman proceeded on to Wilson after ascertaining his comrade was safe and not hurt, making the trip to Wilson safely. The two airmen followed the Norfolk Division railroad tracks from Langley Field to Rocky Mount. When they reached the city, they took the wrong course, following the northbound tracks of the ACL Railroad instead of going south to Wilson. As the two flyers passed over the city headed north, they realized they had, to much excitement, larger crowds watching, watching them. When they proceeded as far as Elm City, Enfield, they realized they were going the wrong direction and turned back. When they neared Brattleboro, engine trouble developed in one plant and the aviator forced to make the landing. So anyway, a neat story there about these two pilots were flying along following the railroad tracks and managed to take the wrong railroad track and ended up going the wrong way. And so anyway, but I called Bob Merritt. By the way, I want to say thanks to Bob Merritt too. I called Bob and I said, Bob, what do you know about this? And of course, this was before Bob's time too. But he remembered hearing the story about Mr. Phillips and the plane crashing his field. So he shed a little bit of light on it too and said, oh yeah. And he told me about the other airplane crash that happened out from Seven Bridges Road out that way, out from Brattleboro. But that was just something I had never heard of, didn't know anything about. I thought it was kind of an interesting story that they were flying along, following railroad tracks and got lost. You would think flying along the tracks you wouldn't get lost, but I guess it happens. While I was going along again looking, I stumbled across yet another airplane crash, and luckily this did not end in a fatality. This young fellow was 20 years old in 1948. Some of you may remember this guy. His name was Ben Rooks, R-O-O-K-S. And, you know, I feel like I supposed to know him or his family or something about him. This name rings all kind of bells with me, but I just could not place him. But this article appeared April 14th of 1948, and at that time, Mr. Ben Rooks was a new pilot. I understand his uncle had been a pilot in World War II, an Air Force pilot, or Army Air Corps pilot, and had taught Ben how to fly an airplane. And so, if you would, Lee, go ahead and put up the second picture here. And this is the story that appeared in the Even Telegram in April of 1948, and it just shows a picture of the plane there, and it says local youth falls in plane, believed seriously injured. In fact, he was seriously injured, as I said. He survived the crash, and I understand that for many years after, he was never quite the same. I'm not sure if he had some kind of traumatic brain injury or just was severely injured to the point he never fully recovered. But he was from somewhere around over in the Williford town area of Rocky Mount, over Nashville Road, over that way over there. And the story goes, and this was supposedly told to one of, I think his nephew, by him himself, and he said he was flying along and basically trying to see if he could fly his airplane and straddle chimney tops between the wheels of his airplane. And somehow or another he got too close or pulled up and the plane went into a stall, and he ended up crashing in a field right over there somewhere not too far from where he was flying around. But anyway, this was in April of 1948. And Lee, go ahead. There's 2 or 3 pictures with this story here. I think that plane was a little Piper Cub, I think a J3 Piper Cub. But as you can see, it's a miracle he survived at all because his plane was banged up pretty well, especially the cockpit area. And again, it's a miracle that anyone could have survived this plane crash, but he did. And I understand in later years he got married, and like I said, if anyone knows this guy or knew him, give us a call. 407-1111 is our number. But as I said, I just felt like I was supposed to know either him or somebody in his family. The name Rooks just rang a bell with me, but I just could never quite figure out from where I knew him or anyone else with that name. But anyway, April 1948, this plane crash happened. Okay. You know, in prior shows we've talked about what used to be called the Brickyard. It was out on North Church Street out there where now, in the general area where Joey Griffin Kia is. And at one time when I was a teenager, that area out there used to be known as being a place for motorcycle riders would ride. I knew several guys who went up there and rode motorcycles. And of course, it was the original location for what would in later years become Nash Brick Company. And they later moved operations out to a little community called Ida, out Highway 43 out north of Rocky Mount. But anyway, in 1902, there was a couple businessmen who got together and created this brickyard out there, and they had a big pit. They dug clay and stuff up, made brickwood, and it was an operation for many years. But go ahead, Lee, and pull this next picture up here, number 7, I think it is in your list in there. And this is actually, I think this first one is the actual pit itself, and there's a old drag line shovel there. And these are very old pictures. It's from 1902. And it looks to me, just based on that image on the left, I think this is a steam-powered drag line. And I mean, they dug a pretty big hole out there, mining or digging up clay to make brick with. And in later years, this was all filled in and brought back to grade, and it's hard now to even envision that there was something like this out there. But this is in a general area. If you know where the Rocky Mount Bowling Center is out there, kind of across the road there, across Church Street from the bowling center, and that field area out there now, it goes actually to where Joy Griffin Kia is, but it also heads back south, back down toward what used to be Thomas and Howard. I forgot what it's called now, so something else, Johnstone, I think. But anyway, that area right along in there, and that road that comes up there and meets Church Street, Jeffries Road, Mr. Jeffries was instrumental in getting this brickyard started. And I seem to recall reading somewhere that even Robert Henry Ricks was involved in this at one point too. Okay, let's go to the next picture if we could then. And this is just another image, more of a kind of, I guess this is up looking down into the picture. You see the railroad tracks there where they would scuttle the stuff out, the clay out, and get it on board trains and whatever. And once they get the bricks made, I'm sure they would be shipped out by train. If you think about where this location is, a train track was right over there behind all this, so it was very easy access. I ran across a picture. I wish I'd have thought to dig it up and find it and share it with you tonight, because I found a picture, and I shared it on a prior show when we talked about this brickyard one time before. And I'm not sure how old the picture was, but it was an aerial shot, and you could still see a faint outline of a train road bed or track bed where the train track had kind of spurred off from the main railroad track there and came around toward this brickyard area. But like I said, these are very old pictures. These are from 1902. I think there might be one more. Is it Lee? Number 9, I believe. There you go. And this is just an advertisement, Nash Brick Company since 1902. As I said, in later years it was changed hands a couple times. Mr. Coleman, I think these were two brothers that eventually ended up owning it. And it's changed hands again since then. The Colemans are no longer involved with it. One of my old neighbors, Don Bowden, was a principal in it. I'm not sure. I think Don may have sold his share out some years ago too. But they're still in operation as far as I know up there at Ida. And but that's pretty strong line of operation from 1902, to 2022, 120 years. This place has been in operation under one name or another. So pretty good longevity there. Okay, I stumbled across another picture just browsing on the newspapers.com website and bouncing back and forth between that and another site that had old postcards and so forth, and stumbled across a picture from 1915 of the Rocky Mount Power Plant. And a couple things to draw your attention to here. Number one, the brick building, of course, is the power plant. Down there where Chico's is now, that's the same building. And you see off to the right there, that's the steel bridge that goes over Tar River. And you see all that's on the other side of the river at this point was all woodland. I mean, it was all undeveloped. There was nothing over there, actually. I mean, Sunset Avenue at this point, I'm sure probably wasn't even named. You see it's a dirt road here in this picture. And but it's a neat old picture. I'm not sure, the old tank that used to be out there on the left-hand side, kind of where that mound is there now. I think that tank has since been, dug up, done away with, whatever. It's gone, I believe, anyway. And I'm not sure what purpose it would have served in 1915 when this picture was taken, unless there was some kind of tank there then too, or maybe an earlier tank, and they replaced it in later years with a bigger tank. But you notice the smokestack is not there in this picture either, so in some point it was added on. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
All right, that picture of the old power plant right there with the trestle-type bridge across Tar River, I've never seen that picture. That's before the smokestack was ever built. I've never seen a date on when that brick smokestack was built.
Yeah, this is from 1915. This was dated 1950. It's a very old picture.
Right.
It's neat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and also you'll notice there's some utility poles that are going alongside the road there. That kind of, there's one of them there, kind of right next to that pine tree, and then you go look a little bit further, and there's 2 or 3 more before you get to the steel bridge. So it appears as if there was power running over Tar River, and I'm a little surprised to see that, because when you cross over Tar River in 1915, I don't think there was much of anything over there.
That's right, but at that point in time, there undoubtedly would have been that railroad track that the Tar River Lumber Company had that come away from behind where Rocky Mountain Senior High was.
Right.
On Tillery Street, their trestle that went across the river.
Mm-hmm.
Was just downstream from that bridge you're looking at right there that was the roadway.
Right. That's exactly right. It sure was.
I've never seen that picture of the power plant before the brick smokestack was put there.
Yeah, that's a neat old picture. It sure is. All right, buddy. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okie dokie. So anyway, like I said, this was 1915. And it does look quite a bit different now. As Eric said, the smokestack had not been built yet at this time. And the building just looks to me to be smaller. I think it was added on to at some point. It just doesn't look to me to be as big. But then again, it's hard to tell. But anyway, 1915, the Rocky Mount Power Plant. I stumbled across another ad. And you know, if you watch this show every week, you know I quite often will mention the Rocky Mount Fair. It just breaks my heart that we don't have a fair anymore. Some of my most fondest childhood memories are of going to the fair with my family as a child, and even taking my kids when they were small. And it's just a shame that we don't have a Rocky Mount Fair anymore. We have fairs all around us, but we don't have one anymore. But in 1916, I stumbled across this. I think it's picture number 12. I'm sorry, number 11. Is it? There you go. The big Rocky Mount Fair, this was from 1916. Now, I'm not sure, we've talked in the past in prior shows about, you know, the fair was over off Fairview Road for many, many years, and in later years it was out off 64 Highway. I seem to recall reading something about it being somewhere down around the area of Gray Street, Church Street, down that area at one point. I seem to recall seeing an old map, in fact, one of those old Sanborn maps, and I believe I saw where the fair was located somewhere in that area down there. So that may have been when it was, when this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in 1916. But you see it ran October 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Best racetrack in the South. There were 75 horses now entered. And there were 2 bands playing, an American band and an Italian band. 2,000 feet of midway and fine free attractions. So for well over 100 years, the Rocky Mount Fair has entertained people of all ages, and it's just a doggone shame that we don't have a Rocky Mount Fair anymore. I'll keep harping on this, and maybe at some point in the future we'll get us a fair. I tell you what, Lee, bring it back to me. This is a good time for us to take our first commercial break for the evening. Folks, when we come back, I'm going to share some pictures with you that Wallace Abernathy sent me. I was really excited to see these pictures because if you remember from our previous show, we talked about an old plantation house called Coolmore. It's out on Old 64 between Rocky Mount and Tarboro. And a few years ago, I actually had an opportunity to go in that house, and at the time, I had no idea of its historical significance. But Wallace sent me some pictures, so when we come back from the break, we'll take a look at some of these pictures. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornstalk Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornstalk Funeral Home.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. If you're turning 65 or you're currently on Medicare, I can help you make the best decision for the Medicare plan that will suit your needs. Don't wait. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
We're back, folks. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. We're talking about all kinds of old stuff tonight, old buildings and old property and old streets and old part of Rocky Mount and the area. But, occasionally we branch out from Rocky Mount. We talk about things from Tarboro and Wilson and outside the immediate area because, we're all tied together, number one. We're tied together by the railroad, the river, the highways, and so forth. And so I mentioned earlier that I had gotten some pictures from Wallace Abernathy, and I was really excited when I saw these pictures because I've got pictures of Coolmore Plantation, the house itself, but these were pictures I had not seen before. And so as I was looking at these pictures, I was trying to remember my visit to this house, and I went there to do a job with someone else. We were actually hired to go look at they were having some computer problems at their home, internet, and so forth, and so I was asked to go along in a consultant capacity. And so I met the other company there and went inside the home, and we did an evaluation, and I was there probably 30, 45 minutes, and then we left. And not once did the topic ever come up that I was actually in a house that was well over 100 years old. And it was just really surprising to me to start learning about Coolmore. And so anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead, Lee, and bring up picture number 12, which is the first one in this collection here that Wallace Abernathy sent me. And it's a neat old house built in 1859. And so you see Dr. Joseph Powell built the home. It was designed by Baltimore architect Edmund G. Lind. And like I said, it's a really neat old house. I didn't get a chance to go through it and see very much of it. We were kind of limited into one particular area of the house that we were looking at and just trying to assist with some troubleshooting issues and so forth. But, I'm finding out about a lot of these old houses, particularly as you get over toward Tarboro. Tarboro's got more old houses and more older houses than we have here in Rocky Mount. And, there's some houses that date back to the 1700s in Tarboro. But anyway, this was Coolmore, and the picture on the right is really special because at that point the trees had not grown. I'm not sure when that picture was taken, but if you notice to the left, you see the trees are much larger and kind of obscure the house. And when I was there, I would have never known that the house that I was pulled up in front of was the same house as that one on the right, because you had to get right up to the house before you realized that it was the same house. And again, I was there to do a job. I was there meeting someone else, and so we met the owners and walked on inside the house, and never thought crossed my mind I was entering something as historically significant. Let's go ahead and lead to the next page if we could then. And this is just another view of the same house. And I'm guessing these pictures, there you go. You see again, the construction cost $20,000, by the way. So in 1859, 20 grand would get you a pretty nice little spread there. And I'm not sure how far the land goes around this house, but 20 grand to build you know, and this house isn't huge, don't get me wrong. It's not, you know, like a Biltmore estate or anything like that, but it is a very nice home even today, and it's been through several remodels over the years. But what little bit I got a chance to see while I was there, it seems to be still very good condition. All right, let's go to the next one if we could then. I think there's one. This was another neat picture that was included in the bunch that Wallace sent me. I had never heard of the Wilson Female Academy. And it was constructed by Connor and Farmer in 1859 for $8,000. It was a 40-room facility with a 2-story frame structure, 200 feet across the front. This was a big, big school. I mean, it really was. I'm not sure how many students that there were attending this academy any given day, but it was a female school. And I think the next picture, Lee, might be a little better image. You go ahead and pull that up if you would. Well, this is, you see roughly, there's train tracks in the foreground there. I'm not sure, I don't think the building number 1 is still there. I think it's long been demolished and torn down. But for some reason, this kind of brings me to mind, if you're familiar with Wilson at all, where Pender Street comes in and barrels to the left there, as you come in off of 301, barrel to your right, and you get down to, I think it's Pender Street, it might be Goldsboro Street. Anyway, the train tracks cross over down there, and this kind of, it doesn't look that way now, obviously, but it kind of reminds me of that area of Wilson down there. So you're a few blocks off of downtown Wilson at this point. And go ahead and lead to the next one. I think there might be one more in this grouping. There you go. To me, this is just a really ornate building. A lot of similar architecture to what we just saw in the Coolmore estate. It's amazing how similar these two buildings are. But then again, if you notice, the same architect built this as built the Coolmore estate, that Edmund G. Lynn from Baltimore. So, you know, one was a residence and one was a school, but you see the architectural design there, very similar in these two buildings. And you don't see this, you know, this kind of detailed architectural work anymore. It's a shame, really, that we don't. But now everything is kind of boxy and blocky, and you know. You just don't see the ornamentation on the facades and on the eaves, and I mean it's so neat to see this kind of work, and to know that the skilled craftsmen that did this took great pride in their work, and it shows. I mean, these two buildings just exhibit an awful lot of craftsmanship there. Okay, Lee, this next picture is one that I was totally unfamiliar with. I knew Wilson had its share of old hotels, just like Rocky Mount did, but this was the New Briggs Hotel that was constructed in the 1870s at a cost of $15,000. I'm not sure where this was, obviously somewhere downtown Wilson. I'm not sure, I don't think this building is still standing either, though it may be. My guess is it's been long demolished. It would be well over 100 years old, obviously, but I'm just saying, I never knew anything about this building. I never knew that it existed. A Cherry Hotel, I just saw recently is someone has purchased it, and I understand they're going to rehab it and refurb it, and I think make apartments out of it or something. But you know, we talk about the old Rocky Mount hotels like the Cambridge and the Rick's Hotel and some of the other hotels that were downtown Rocky Mount. But Wilson had their share, Tarboro had their share. And it's just neat that these little towns had these really ornate hotels, and certainly this one fit that bill. Okay, let's go on then, if we could, Lee. This next picture was also included. If you remember last week, we showed a picture of a pool, and Wallace sent me this picture, and he was asking me whether or not this picture could be the same one or same pool as the one I showed last week. This is a really neat pool here. This is actually from Tarboro. And in 1933, this pool opened in Tarboro. And I'm going to read a little something that Wallace had sent along with this picture. It said in July 1933, just months after Tarboro Pool opened, the town council hired an industrial refrigeration company to design and install a cooling unit for their new pool. The summer of 1933 was a steamy one in eastern North Carolina. Fortunately for residents of Tarboro, the town had a brand new Olympic-sized municipal pool that held 300,000 gallons of water and a promise of a cool escape. Unfortunately, however, the relentless heat and the resulting popularity of the swimming pool made the water too warm to enjoy. So in July, just 3 months after the pool opened, the town council hired an industrial refrigeration company to design and install a cooling unit for their new pool. It costed nearly $3,000, more than $50,000 in today's dollars, but by mid-August, Tarboro was the home of what is believed to be the first and only refrigerated outdoor pool in the nation. The cool pool was a hit. State and regional swim meets were held there often throughout the 1930s and 40s, which helped put the town on the national swimming map. Tarboro swimmers won medals all over the country. The pool closed in the late 1970s, but childhood memories of a cool summer fun remain. I never knew that there was any such thing as a cooled pool. I've heard of heated pools, so you go swimming in the winter, but I never heard of a pool that they intentionally chilled the water to make it more comfortable in the summertime. But this will happen, and this is Tarboro. And so this is the Tarboro pool. Now, the reason I mentioned that, and the reason I wanted to bring it up was because the other pool I showed last week was in fact a Rocky Mount pool. Some of you may be old enough to remember this pool. My mother told me many, many years ago that she remembered when that pool was over behind what was the old public library, old Hackney Brown's old library over there. And I think it closed, sometime in the night, because Sunset Park opened up in 1941, I think it was. But that pool was there from roughly 1922 up until it closed in the late 1930s. And so I don't know if any of you remember that pool. Some of you may be old enough to have swam in that pool. I don't think my mother ever swam. She was only born in 1939, so I don't think she would have been old enough to swim in that pool. But apparently some remnants of it were still there that she remembered as a child. And it was behind the old, like I said, the library. So anyway, let's go ahead, Lee, and I mentioned earlier that Randy Harrell had sent me some pictures. I'd asked a couple of weeks ago if anyone had any pictures of inside Tarrytown Mall. And Randy sent me 2 or 3. This one was obviously after Hurricane Floyd in 1999. But this is the area down there where Roses used to be. In later years, Goodies took over that spot. And I think I'd seen this picture before, or one similar to it. But it's really a shame to see, obviously the destruction was at this point limited to, you see where they had torn out the bottom part of the wall there where the flood level had gotten up. That's probably, 6 or 8 foot at that point. That's how deep it was inside Tarrytown Mall when it flooded during Hurricane Floyd. But in any case, this was taken sometime late 1999 after Hurricane Floyd came through here. Okay, Lee, let's go to the next one then. The next picture is a picture of Hertzberg Furs entrance at Tarrytown Mall. And I think this was earlier. I think this was actually when the mall was actually in operation. I don't recall seeing this picture again. And it looks to me that there's lights on the inside, obviously, so I'm guessing this was at a point when the mall was still operational and Hertzberg Furs was in business. So I don't have a date on this. I'm going to guess somewhere in the 1970s maybe, but that's purely a guess. So, okay. One of my favorite stores as a teenager going to Tarrytown Mall was the Record Bar. And Randy sent this picture to the Record Bar. It was actually an ad that appeared in the paper, and it was a much bigger ad, and I cropped out the part that shows the interior of the Record Bar. But as soon as I saw this picture, I just had a flood of memories coming back of walking around and spending a few hours browsing through cassette tapes and albums, looking for that perfect song, the perfect album, the perfect cassette tape. And, Record Bar was just a cool place for a teenager. When I was in my teenage years and spent a lot of time at Tarrytown Mall, the Record Bar was a place I loved going into. You often would see friends in there. It was just a really neat place to be. And like Tarrytown Mall itself, it was a great place to meet and mingle with people. And I spent a many happy hour browsing through the Record Bar. Okay. There's one more picture here, Lee, I think, of Tarrytown interior that was in that group that Randy sent. There you go. This was obviously during Christmas. You see the Christmas tree there to your left, upper left-hand corner of the screen. It was packed all the way. That's Montgomery Ward's at the far, far end of the mall there. So you're looking south inside the mall. And it's hard to believe that Tarrytown Mall was that packed. But I remember those days. I remember when it was indeed that packed. Christmas time was a special time all over Rocky Mount, and especially at Tarrytown Mall. But they just give you some idea of how loved that mall was by so many people. It was literally elbow to elbow and shoulder to shoulder inside Tarrytown Mall. And you know, a lot of shopping going on there, obviously. Okay. All right. Also, this next picture is from 1950. This is not Tarrytown Mall, by the way, but go ahead, Lee, and put this up. This was a neat picture that Gene Herring, I mentioned earlier, Gene was great about finding these old pictures and old stories and sharing them on Facebook and the Rocky Mount Wayback When Facebook group. And this was actually what I always refer to as a Marita bakery. It was actually technically the American bakery plant. But we all refer to it as Marita Bakery on Church Street. And of course, it got flooded during Hurricane Floyd as well. But I don't think I've ever seen this particular picture. This is one that I had not seen before. And Gene Herring actually shared it on the Rocky Mount Wayback When Facebook page earlier this week, or last week perhaps. But anyway, I found it and thought I would share that too. Okay. You know, we've talked a couple times on this show about Gardner Dairy. Mr. Jim Gardner, his father started it, James C. Gardner Sr. And Gene Herring did a really neat spread, a really neat layout, again in Facebook, about that, that dairy and a little history behind it. So Lee, if you would, put up the next picture. For those that may not have remembered or may not have known Mr. Gardner, that was him. This was Jim Gardner's father. His name was James C. Gardner Sr., and of course his son, James C. Gardner Jr., future Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. But anyway, this was the man who started it all. He's holding a container of ice cream there. But I want to read to you a little bit. This is what Gene Herring had put together to accompany the pictures that I'll show you in a minute. It says, before national brands dominated the dairy industry, local dairies served their community with farm fresh products. Rocky Mount was home to many dairies. In 1935, Gardner's Dairy Products Company was founded by James C. Gardner at 216 Rose Street. Along with milk, Gardner's Dairy sold ice cream under the name Velvet Ice Cream. In 1940, Gardner's Dairy moved to a larger location at 1148 West Thomas Street. The most modern equipment available was installed in a new facility. A new signature brand of ice cream named Chipper was introduced and marketed to kids. Saturday morning movies were sponsored by Chipper and shown at the Center Theater. In January 1943, disaster struck as a blast rocked the West Thomas Street plant. An ammonia leak sparked a freak explosion. The blast caused extensive damage to the building. Repairs were made and the dairy continued to thrive. Gardner's sons, Jim and Jerry, joined the family business. Jim Gardner later assumed the role of vice president. In May of 1960, Gardner's Dairy was named Industry of the Month by the local Lions Club. In 1961, Gardner's Dairy merged with Mayola Dairy of New Bern. This merger created the largest independent dairy in the region. So a lot of history there with the Gardner family dairy system. And there's some really neat pictures. So Lee, if you would, go ahead and let's go through these. This is a 216 location, 216 Rose Street location. I never knew there was ever a dairy in that building right there. There's been a bunch of things. You see the old sign for Killebrew Radio was in there for a while. We got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
All right, that story about the Gardner's Dairy, they never operated a dairy herd that produced milk. I understand, they only bought milk from regional farmers who had cows, but Gardner's Dairy didn't never have a herd of cows where they took milk from.
I think you're right. I never remember hearing anything about any cows. I think you're exactly right. That was pretty savvy if you think about it. They got the milk and did the processing and didn't have to worry about the vet bills and everything associated with taking care of cows. So, yep.
All right.
It made it work. Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Sure.
All righty. So, as I said, this building obviously was occupied by Killebrew Radio at one time. I think, Waters Brothers Contracting was in this building one time. There was a plumbing company in this building at one time. There was a paint center in this building at one time. There's been a lot of different businesses that operated either in the entirety of the building or it was sectioned off too. So there were businesses in different parts of the building. And I'm not sure how much of the building Gardner's Dairy had when they were in here in 1935, but this is apparently where they started out in 1935. So anyway, go ahead and lead to the next picture. And you know what? I just realized we about missed our commercial. I'll tell you what, let's take a break, Lee. When we come back from the break, we'll look at some more of these dairy pictures and we'll talk a little bit more about it. In the meantime, folks, don't go anywhere. We've got more to show you. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornstalk Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. If you're turning 65 or you're currently on Medicare, I can help you make the best decision for the Medicare plan that will suit your needs. Don't wait. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And welcome back. Welcome back. You're watching Wayback Wednesday, folks. I'm Randy Adcox. Having a good time tonight, looking back and taking a look back at some old businesses and family-operated businesses that have been around Rocky Mount for many, many years. Before the break, we were talking about Gardner's Dairy and how they got started over on Rose Street in 1935 by Mr. James Gardner Sr., and then later years moved over onto Thomas Street. I remember them being in operation over there. I think at that time it was actually, I'm not sure when they merged. 1960 they merged. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. They were named Interest of the Month in 1960. In 1961 they merged with Mayola. So what I remember being there was Mayola. It had already changed in the hands by the time, or merged by the time I came along. But anyway, let's get back to the leaf we could to the pictures. I mentioned that they come out with this ice cream and they marketed it to kids. It was called Chipper, and the Center Theater was their matinees and so forth on Saturday morning was sponsored by the Chipper ice cream. And of course, you see there this ad appeared in the Telegram, and this would have been from probably the 1940s, 1950s perhaps. And they were obviously giving away a new bicycle there, or giving away a chance to win a bicycle, I should say. WCEC Radio participated. You see it says featuring Uncle Ray Wilkinson. Many of you remember Ray, the voice of agribusiness for this part of the state. You know, if you're familiar with WCEC Radio and, their platform over the years, they've always been or in years past, I should say, were very attuned to the local agricultural market. I had some very fond memories of hearing Ray Wilkinson talk about the hog prices being steady on the eastern market, and talk about how much the cows sold for and the hogs sold for, and of course tobacco prices, corn prices, soybean prices, and so forth. But so WCEC was a part of this promotion, and of course the Gardner Ice Cream, big sponsor there with the Chipper Show. Okay, Lee, let's go to the next one if we could. And I think this is just another, there you go. Probably 1950s, early 50s, based by that car there on the side of the street I see. Center Theater, you see the Chipper shows there today. And again, they were sponsoring this Saturday morning matinees for kids. And seemed to be a pretty good crowd of kids there coming to see the Saturday morning matinee at the Center Theater. Was there a few times myself on Saturday morning, sure was. And late Friday night too for the late show. Okay, Lee, let's go ahead then. This next picture, there you go. This is the Thomas Street location, obviously. And this is what I remembered, of course, as being Mayola milk. Someone helped me out here. For some reason, I want to say that at some point Seal Test was involved in this too. I may be thinking of another building, but for some reason the Seal Test milk comes to mind, and I don't know if they were part of this or if they were at one point in this building too, but I do remember this building. It's long been torn down now, obviously, but this was where Gardner Dairy moved to and then later merged with Mayola. This is also the location that had the bad explosion. In fact, Lee, let's go to the next couple of pictures. There's a better shot of the front of the building there. And then the next picture, I think, there you go, there's an ad talking about the Velvet Ice Cream. That was their brand, the store brand, if you will, of dairy, of Gardner Dairy was the Velvet. And brick or bulk, 50 cents for a full quart. That's a good price for ice cream right there. All right, Lee, and I think the last one here, I forgot, there's two pictures of the equipment. I mentioned earlier the write-up that Gene shared mentioned the state-of-the-art milk processing equipment they use, the big vats and everything to pasteurize the milk. And as Eric said, they didn't have cows, they didn't have a dairy farm per se. They purchased milk from local dairy farmers and they processed it and then turned it into milk, or ice cream and milk products and so forth. And so anyway, all this equipment was used to take the milk they had acquired from the local dairy farmers and put it into a ice cream product or milk product that could then be sold to the public at large. So go ahead, Lee, let's go to the next one. I think this is another picture of some more of the equipment inside. There you go. This may even be a picture of, there's a gentleman standing in the background there. You see with the white uniform on. A little bit grainy picture. I apologize. These weren't great quality pictures. They were reproduced, obviously, a couple times from being in the Telegram. But anyway, this is when it was still in operation. And so I think there's one more of a milk. There you go. Bulk carriers. You see it says Velvet on the side. That's the Gardner ice cream brand with Velvet. It says handling milk in bulk with trucks such as this one. Has resulted in savings in transportation and handling costs, and at the same time increases the value of milk. The saving benefit to producers as well as the dairy. So, prior to this, you didn't see these great big tankers hauling milk around. It wasn't practical. And once they began to figure out how they could transport large quantities of milk without it going bad and going, souring, so to speak, they were able to move much more milk product to a more larger market. So, okay. All right, Lee, let's go to the next one then. And there you go. There's Mr. Jim Gardner. And I don't know if Jim watches the show or not. I've said before, I have the utmost respect for Jim Gardner. He is, in I won't say he's a hero of mine, but I will say I have very much admiration for the man and respect for the man. But this is him at a very early age. He went to work with his father in the dairy business. In later years, branched out on his own with the Gardner's Restaurants. Took a run at politics, obviously. Was a lieutenant governor. Ran for Congress, I think, at one time, too. So very, very well-rounded and very productive life for Mr. Gardner. I tip my hat to the gentleman. All right, Lee. So I think there's one more, I think, in this grouping. And I think, go ahead to the next one if you would. There you go. I'm thinking this was taken around the back part of the building. It doesn't say, just this was a picture of the damage that happened with this explosion that took place in 1943. Obviously the damage was extensive, but they did come back. They rebuilt, they repaired the damage and came back and were operating for several more years after this. So anyway. Okay, I mentioned at the top of the show about the swimming pool that was over behind the Thomas Hackney Brazel Library. And I'm not exactly sure exactly where it was, just that it was in that general area. But I got to doing some digging to see what I could find, and I found several newspaper articles. And apparently as far back as 1919, July of 1919, there was an outcry from citizens of Rocky Mount to have a city pool. I'm not sure how many other small towns around the area had one, but at that time, Rocky Mount did not. And so there was an effort launched to get a public swimming pool for Rocky Mount. And so, Lee, if you would go ahead and put up the next, this is a newspaper article from July of 1919. And I'm not going to try to read this whole thing. I'll just kind of skim over it. It says nearly $1,000 has been pledged towards the construction of the swimming pool in Brazel Park. Although the swimming pool matter is still in the hands of the subcommittee, this is hard to read, it's really, really faint. It talks about the alderman and the city and the Chamber of Commerce, but the bottom line is, in July of 1919, they began to have talks and discussions about putting a pool in Rocky Mount, a city pool. There you go. That's a little easier to read there, Lee. Thank you. But anyway, at this point, it was just talk. There was obviously some people who were pushing this, trying to get it to happen. And it was something that, the alderman, if you remember saying last week's show, before we had city council members, we had city aldermen. And so the alderman and the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor, they were the ones, and the local civic organizations. In fact, the Kiwanis Club was very active in getting this started. So anyway, there were requests put out to raise money to help defray the cost of putting the pool in. And so anyway, this all started in July of 1919. Okay, Lee, if you would, let's go ahead. There's a bunch of these, and we don't have time to go through them all, I'm sure, but I just kind of want to paint a picture here. So in 1920, there was another city alderman meeting, and at that meeting, they brought it up again. It says, representing the local Kiwanis Club, a committee composed of Mr. W.B. Barrow, Bruce Lee, and J.C. Brazel appeared before the board to offer the city a swimming pool. I'm going to get this call here. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
All right. That swimming pool many years ago that was up there near the Thomas Hackney Brazel Library was between the south side of the Thomas Hackney Brazel Library and McDonald Street.
Mm-hmm.
And those years went down beside the Imperial Tobacco Factory.
Right. That's right. It ran between Gray Street and Church Street.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
McDonald Street was 1 block long, and it stretched, like you said, from Franklin to Church Street. And that's where that pool was. It was basically kind of in the yard, the side yard of the Brazel Library.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one other thing very quickly. I know you're running short of time, but talking about aviation and plane crashes in the Rocky Mountain area, there was a single-engine plane crash that happened. I don't know what year it was, but it crashed into the southeast corner of the now Dillon Supply Building, and it left Rocky Mountain Airport when Mr. Floyd Pullen was the manager, owner, or whatever. The plane took off and went across the tar rubble, went down through downtown Rocky Mountain. When he had engine trouble, he tried to turn around and get back to the Rocky Mountain Airport. The plane went down and hit the building where Dillon Supply is. The engine wound up going through the roof of the building and was on the floor of the third floor of that building. That story is in that little book that Foy Pullen.
Right, you know, and I'd forgotten about that. I sure had. I'm glad you reminded me, because that's another plane crash in this area. So I need to go back and dig that up and try to get I think there's a picture of that plane crash, or some part of it anyway, I seem to recall.
It happened.
Yep. Okay, buddy, thank you.
Goodbye.
Have a good night. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, interest in the pool began to really build up a head of steam over the next couple of years, from 1919, 1920, 1921. There was even a red tag promotion instigated. Lee, if you would go ahead on to picture number 39 real quickly. We'll try to wrap this up here. But local businesses got involved. You see there the city pool, swimming pool is set by the city. What, time for one more call maybe? I guess they hung. Oh, no, maybe not. There we go. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, hello. I was just wanting to ask, do you believe all that the Bible says?
Well, sir, I do. Do you? Okay, thanks for calling. Okay. All right. Swimming pool accepted by the city. Kiwanis and the Chamber of Commerce representatives confer with Park Committee. So sometime around 1922, that pool was finally, we're out of time, folks. I'm not sure. I don't have time to take this call. I do apologize. Anyway, I want to thank everybody. Lee, bring it back to me. Folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning in tonight and watching the show. It's been my pleasure to be with you, as always. And thanks to those that sent pictures in and contributed to the show. It's always a great joy to me to get these pictures from y'all. So thanks again, folks. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.